As you know, we use this platform to share stories of resilience. And today I have a very special guest. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sally Allen podcast. I am so glad that you're here. As you know, we use this podcast as a platform for people to share stories of resilience. We like to see them being vulnerable, and we just like to see the true side of them. That's what we do here. And today, I have my friend Matt Wilson. I've known Matt for 12 years, almost 12 years.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, we worked together at a former company, and that's where we met. Matt, I'm going to embarrass him a little bit. He didn't know. He doesn't know I'm going to say this stuff. But I was thinking about the intro format. While he's the president and the CEO of Light and Wonder. He's a girl dad. He has 3 beautiful girls. His wife is drop dead gorgeous. And he has, you'll hear his accent. I love his Australian accent. But Matt is a kind soul. And he tries to hide that behind being funny, right? And I found this out. I found who he was and his type of leadership one day when he called me into his office. You might not remember the story. I'm embarrassed you a little bit. He called me into his office and they just announced something big at the business. And he called me into his office and he said, "What do you think people think about this?" And that blew my mind because I consider myself, I don't think I'm a nobody, but I'm far down the totem pole that I don't think that an executive like Matt would call me and ask my opinion. And from that day, I've seen him in a different light since then because he really genuinely cares about people. He's a people-centric leader. And that's what I love about him. And that's one of the reasons why I'm having him on my podcast because while he's a people-centric leader, he's a decent human being. And I want him to talk to us a little bit about that. So Matt Wilson, welcome to the Sally Allen podcast.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks for that introduction. I do remember that actually, and yeah, I think as you grow up in your career, you have these moments of imposter syndrome, and when you get promoted, you think, "Can I actually do this?" And I've had that throughout my career, and sometimes you put on this big, brave bravado that you can achieve anything and do anything, but there's still a little Matt Wilson inside, that's that takes some convincing sometimes that I'm capable of all the things that are put in front of me. So
yeah, you've been nothing but humble, but when I look at you, the word charisma comes to mind. I see you as being this charismatic leader. And one of the first leadership books that I read was John Maxwell, 21 Indispensable Laws, Influential Laws of Leadership, one of those. And they talk about charismatic and what a charismatic leader looks like. And you are the epitome of that, is that you live life to the fullest and people see how much you enjoy life outside of work while you have work and you care so much about work and you're so passionate. You live life outside of that. That came from somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's less about charisma and more about optimism. Like I'm a very optimistic person. We use this Harrison assessment tool at the company that I lead called the Harrison Assessment. It's kind of assesses you on lots of different dimensions, and there's lots of areas where I score low. One that I score very high is optimism. I just believe there's a way through this, and there's a way for us to conquer this. And I think that's what you probably observe in me is my willingness to kind of get people motivated to do things that they don't think they can do. I think that's sounds a bit narcissistic, but that's potentially one of my superpowers, is to get people to push themselves a little bit further than they actually think that they can go.
Yeah. So I remember you told me a story a while back.
Okay.
and there are certain things that you said to me that stuck out to me. And this one was you ran a race. And I think your wife was waiting for you at the end, and you were bleeding your feet and you were crying, but you got to the end of that race.
Yes.
And that speaks of resiliency, like the things you do, right? Where did that come from? Like, when did that start in your life?
Yeah, this is kind of on the fly. You're bringing up some old conversations. Yeah, I did this stupid race in Australia called the Oxfam 100K race, and it was like as much about sleep deprivation as it was about like a running race. And I remember I got like 90, it was in Australia, so we're doing it in kilometres, but I got 90 kilometres in to the race. We had 10 to go, and I was going up to this checkpoint, and I just like started crying. I didn't even know why. I was like, why am I crying? I was crying because I knew that my wife was going to be at the 90K mark, and I would see her and she'd have like a fresh pair of socks, and I don't know, just was, maybe it was a sleep deprivation, but yeah, I was excited to see her. And I do those silly things, like even kind of bring it back to when I made a career transition from the company that I worked at with you for a long time to kind of leap into the unknown and join a new company. You know, I kind of was like weighing up all these alternatives, you know, should I stay or should I go? And, you know, the staying thing was about, you know, I'd grown up in the business and I knew these people really intimately, and I'd built all this social connection with them, and it was, you know, it was a lot of kind of like personal equity that I built up in this company. So to walk away from that was, you know, a big decision. And I remember I sat down with my wife and my brother and my sister and my mum, and we were on a holiday in Hawaii, actually, where I had to decide whether I was going to go to the new company or whether I was going to stay. And, you know, I didn't know what to do. And I was the worst vacation friend or partner in the world, because I was just like inside my own head just thinking, you know, how could I, you know, make this decision? And I remember my wife said, like, okay, so the decision is you stay because it's comfortable or you go because it's a challenge. And she's like, you know, you do silly things like the Oxfam 100K or triathlons or, you know, Ironmans or marathons. I like to do these. I'm very slow at all these things, mind you, but I like to do them because it just, yeah, there's something in the training for it, the sacrifice of it. Then you kind of, you do it on the day, and again, you push yourself further than you can go. And so she was like, you know, you do challenges for fun, so why would you not take the challenging path here? And that's what I did, and it turned out to be like one of the best career decisions I could have ever made. Is like the leap into the unknown, running away from comfort into what is this thing. So yeah, that was a nice little gentle nudge from my wife that made me make the right decision there.
Yeah, but I also think what I'm hearing you say, the word that comes to mind is loyalty.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can be loyal to a fault. Can you speak to that? Like for somebody who's looking to go to someplace better, and it would be better for their family also, but that's stopping them.
Yeah, I think this is, people get caught up with this all the time about the loyalty to a company. And I just remember when I was going through that transition that I had a lot of mentors just tell me, like, put loyalty aside. Like, you know, you miss a quarter, you miss a half, the business results aren't there, then the business is not loyal to you. Let's be real. Like, this is about capitalism. The thing that you need to be loyal to is loyal to your family. And so the highest order decision is, what's the best thing for my family? I've got a beautiful wife, very supportive wife, and like these three just awesome kids that are growing up, and you know, all of this is for them, you know, to set them up for success in their lives. So yeah, I think people get caught up in loyalty to a business. It's an inanimate object, a business, so it's really about loyalty to your family above all else. And I tell that to the people who work for me: don't be loyal to me, make the best decision for your family. That's the thing that you need to be guided by.
Yeah, I remember that's what you told me. Again, we had another pull aside moment where you like, we had coffee after you left, and you had told me you did this for your family. You had to think about your girls and your wife, and at the end of the day, it all comes down to what's best for you and your family. Yeah,
for sure. And like, you know, I think people are so multifaceted, and I think like a lot of people just see me as you know, a guy who works for a gaming company or leads a Light and Wonder. But yeah, there's so many other dimensions. Like, being a dad just kind of challenges you in so many other ways. I can't even begin to start. But it's awesome. And I like even that optimism and that kind of pushing people to do more than they can. That translates to my kids as well. I like to give them a little nudge and set them some challenges. And yeah, had an interesting summer and some kind of cool things around that as well that were fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the things how old are your girls, by the way?
My eldest is 10, so 10, 8, and 7. And so we got busy there for a few years and had 3 girls pretty quickly. And it's so funny, like it's like nature over nurture. Like they all grew up in the same house, but they're 3 like completely different human beings. Like, it's funny. I think like one of the things that happened over the summer, I've got my eldest girl's called Isabella. She's 10 years old, and she's such a unique little girl. You know, she's like amazing at some things and then not so amazing at other. Like all of us, she has her strengths and weaknesses, and so like she's this kind of theatre student, like amazing at school, great reader, but athletics is not something that's high on her agenda, not something she like is passionate about. And she's had like challenges kind of growing up with, like, didn't have a great experience playing soccer and these kinds of things. But over the summer break, she's really taken to swimming, and we were down in Laguna Beach and on a vacation, and I was trying to convince her to go on this ocean swim from one beach to the next beach. And so it was like this 3-day saga about, I'm going to do it, Dad. And then the next day, I can't do it, Dad. I'm like, that's all right, it's up to you. And then I'm going to do it. And then we eventually ended up doing it. Her and I swam around this point, and it's like, just seeing her achieve that, and like she just lit up like a Christmas tree. Like, there's just nothing better in life than seeing someone that you love or someone that you work with, do something that they don't think they can do, and they achieve it, and then just like the personal satisfaction. I just like watching people experience that is like a complete drug for me. It's awesome. So I had a great little experience with her. Yeah,
that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that and being so vulnerable. But how do you balance a work-life balance? Like, I know it's hard to put down the phone. It's hard to set time aside with your family.
Yep.
Is work always on your mind? How do you clear your mind to be present?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm the best at this. I think many are probably better at the work-life balance thing than I am. I think it's a bit of a fallacy. It's because of the way the world's connected now. You're on email 24/7. There's expectations when you're in my kind of job that you're always available. If something happens, you got to be ready to roll. So I think it's more about work-life integration. So I think it's about making sure your family understands what the perimeter is of what's acceptable with work. And sometimes you have to put the hard line up and say, if we have something special going on in the family, that I'm not available. But I think work-life balance is a bit of a misnomer. Maybe it's a bit of a throwback to when we weren't so connected. I think it's about how do you best integrate those things, and make sure. I have this kind of analogy that I use about the spinning plates. So it's like, I think in your life you have all these spinning plates. You have your personal life. You might have your friends. You might have your kids. You might have your health. You might have your professional life. You might have your sibling connectivity. And it's very hard to have all those plates spinning perfectly all the time. You might put a lot of energy into a couple of those plates for a while, and then one starts to wobble. It might be, I haven't spoken to my brother in a month or so I got to get over there and spin that plate, pick the phone up, have a conversation with him. And so I think for me, that's how I like to think about it, is like, where am I across all these different priorities? And it's impossible to have them all completely dialed in. No one does. They might pretend like they do, but how do you make sure you've got the ones that are wobbling? How do you make sure you find the time to get out there and spin those and make sure they're in good health?
You shared about the spinning plates with me years ago, and I used that on my podcast.
Oh, you did? Oh, right. Okay, awesome. I don't know whether that's proprietary. I stole that from someone, but in my mind, I made that up. So you can probably trace it back to some book that I read somewhere. But in my mind, it's a Matt Wilson creation. So
I always ask people, like, to just picture your life as spinning plates. How do you keep those plates spinning?
Yeah, I mean, it works for me. Totally, the analogy completely works for me.
Yeah, and I absolutely love it because I've been using it ever since. But what would you say to a younger Matt Wilson? Something you felt like you could have done better, and what would you say to younger Matt Wilson?
Yeah, I think, and I get to speak to lots of younger people in their careers, and the thing that I probably figured out later in my career than is optimal is about being intentional. So I think there's a time and place for experimentation. So particularly like in your early 20s, take as many jobs, work as hard as you can, experience as much as you can from a professional setting as possible, because you've got to try to figure out, like, what am I uniquely good at? And to know that, you've got to see yourself in lots of different situations. But once you figure that out, it's about being intentional about your career trajectory. And I think a lot of people just get caught up in, what's the next promotion? What's the next title I can get? What's the next pay rise that I can get? And the analogy I use, I'm big on analogies, but the analogy that I use is like, you want your career to be like, you get in your car and you have a GPS. So once you figure out what you're uniquely good at, you want to be able to put in, what's the destination that I'm trying to get to here? Where do I want this whole thing to end up at the end of my career? And if you know that, you know where you are, you know what the destination is, then the computer will tell you how many lefts, how many rights, all the moves that you need to make to get to there. But if you just get in your car with no destination and just start randomly making left turns, right turns, I don't know, that street looks good, I'll go down there and then I'll switch and I'll go here. And before you know it, you get to 50 years old and you're kind of at the tail end of your career and you're in Albuquerque when you really should have been in LA, And if you'd had been more intentional about it and said, I know what I'm good at, I know where I want this thing to go, then you can start to make the right decisions and not be kind of governed by the next pay rise or the next promotion. That to me is like just random left and right turns. It's like what's the explicit set of actions that can get me to where I should be and what will fulfill me from a career perspective. So I think I learned that kind of later in my career. Someone told me that kind of in my late 20s, and I was studying my MBA when I was out in Macau in Hong Kong, and I figured out that, and this was like a very arrogant thing to say at like 27, it's like, I want to be a CEO. I was doing all these like subjects in this MBA, and the things that I really gravitated towards were things that were about strategic decisions and decision making and leadership and making high conviction decisions. And when I thought about it, I was like, that's what a CEO does. And I was like so far from being a CEO. I was like a sales guy. I was a sales manager at that point in my career. And then someone told me, well, where do you want to do and where do you want this whole thing to end up? And that was the whole thing about program the GPS for where I want to go. So I did say when I was like 26 or 27, I want to be a CEO. And people were like, what? what are you talking about? But it's I manifested it. It happened,
right.
and I just started to make these really intentional decisions about where to take my career. I think the best one was, I knew that I would never get to CEO just going through the sales vertical. I could have got better and better at that and taken on more responsibility and bigger teams, but that's not the pathway to the CEO's office. The pathway to the CEO's office is like through strategy, product, and
right.
And so I made a big pivot in my career when I was about 30. I left Asia to come to the US for a job in marketing. And this goes back to the idea of like, don't be motivated by the next promotion or the next pay rise. I got a salary that was, after tax, was 50% of what I was making in my sales role. And I had to sit down and go, hang on, what? I thought this was like the next big thing in my career. And I kind of sat down with my wife and we weighed it up, and I made the decision to take a 50% pay cut because I knew that was the right turn that would take me towards LA and not Albuquerque. And I think that was the biggest decision in my career. It was a bold one, but that's the thing that really put me on a path to be ultimately the CEO at Light Wonder. So yeah, that's...
So let's rewind. You were 30 when you gave up all that money. And I can't see a 30-year-old. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are driven by money, but you had this goal, your GPS destination that you're going to, and you determined to get there. What, if we were to rewind, go back to when you were growing up, were you like that? What drove you to be who you are, like at 30, to make a decision like that?
Yeah, I don't think I was pre-programmed. I think I was the benefactor of so many great mentors throughout my career who just saw something in me and were just willing to like help shape this dumb kid that didn't know anything about anything. And yeah, I'm so appreciative of that. Like I've just got a Rolodex of all the people in my life who've given me like great advice and invested in me. And I think, that's something for all of us, is you got to pay that forward. So many people don't get that. I think it was where I grew up, who I knew, my background, probably my ethnicity, probably the fact I was a male growing. There's probably a lot of reasons why I was given the mentoring and advice that I was given that's probably not available to everyone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So because the world's not as inclusive as it should be. So, I think I take that on as a torch that I have to pass on to the next set of leaders coming up. And I'm always available to anyone that wants career advice. I try to like hand on these silly metaphors and analogies and nuggets that I've kind of put into my little shopping cart over the years. And yeah, hopefully I had a really awesome chat with this kid. He reached out. He's doing his MBA. He's like in his early 20s, and he's found me on LinkedIn, and he sent me a letter. I think he must have sent, I don't know, 100 letters to different CEOs, and he wrote this really handwritten letter about, you know, his career and what he was learning and all these things. And he said, if you just have a moment, would you send me like some career advice? And I saw like on his letter, he lived in Irvine, and I was going to be in Laguna Beach. So I sent him a note and said, hey, I'm going to be in Laguna Beach, so I'm not going to send you an email. Come and meet me for coffee.
Wow. And
he turned up. He was like in a suit and tie. It was awesome. And he had this whole list of questions, and we were like 2 hours and writing everything down. It was like, I kind of got up and left that conversation and felt like I got more out of that conversation than he did. Like just the satisfaction of like passing this stuff on, and to especially to like a guy, young Asian guy who was like just eating it up, just like more, give me more, tell me about that, give me more. And it was just it was a great exchange. I really enjoyed it.
You saw younger Matt Wilson.
Yeah. No, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's much smarter and much much more deliberate about how he was going about it. Like to send all those letters out to CEOs. What a cool thing to do as a young 20-year-old guy that's at college. I thought that was awesome.
Taking the initiative and just running with it to build better.
Do that. Anyone listening, do this.
That. Yeah.
And I tell you, like, people in big jobs will read those things and go, wow, I wish I was that smart when I was a kid. And they'll give you the time of day, and they'll do the thing that supports what it is that you're trying to do. So that's a younger Matt Wilson. Be more like that guy.
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things that I see during my coaching sessions that I've been doing is imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome leads to lack of confidence. Lack of confidence leads to imposter syndrome, just a chicken and egg effect.
Yes.
Do you, because I tell people this, even CEOs struggle with imposter syndrome.
Sure.
I don't think that they don't.
Yep.
What do you do when you feel like, it's coming on like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough?
Yeah, I think people are a unique species. I think what they can see in people very quickly is authenticity. If you try to fake it, people see right through that. I mean, I think it's a very unique thing that the human species has in droves. And I think, being vulnerable in a work setting is completely appropriate. Like, it's completely appropriate. I've got a great mentor in Jamie Odell. He's the chairman of our company. I tell him all the time, I love it. He's like this very accomplished CEO, executive, and he's the first one in a meeting to go, whoa, hold up. This doesn't make any sense to me. Explain to me exactly what this means.
Yeah.
And everyone in the room's like, and everyone's thinking the same thing, but no one's willing to say it. But he's like the chairman of our company. He's like, this makes no sense. I don't understand it. I'm not smart enough to understand this. Someone in the room, tell me what this means before we move on. And then, he's giving a great gift to everyone in the room because, 95% of the people in the room have zero clue what that is either.
Right.
But he's establishing this baseline and also like role modeling this behavior to say, if you don't understand it, it's your obligation to put your hand up and say, I don't get it, because how are you going to move forward? How are you going to get over your imposter syndrome if you're not getting to the root cause of what that is? And the root cause is you don't have all the answers, and guess what? No one does. So the vulnerability to say, I don't get it, doesn't make sense, someone in this room smarter than me at this, help me out, start to fill your toolkit with the answers to all those questions. Otherwise, you're going to live in this imposter world your whole career. And of course you have it. Like I was promoted to the CEO job a year ago, and there's so many things about this job that I had no clue about, zero clue. Like, we rebranded the company. I'd never been through a rebranding. I don't know what the hell that's about. We did a secondary listing of our company. We listed on the NASDAQ in the US, and we did a secondary listing in Australia.
Sure, yeah.
Zero clue. I had no clue what the process is to do that. But guess what? Like 99.99% of people don't. And we're all going through this for the first time. And that vulnerability to say, I am enough, I'm smart enough to do this job. I'll figure it out if I'm willing to ask the questions and be vulnerable enough to say, I don't understand. I think, again, I've had a great role model that has established that as a kind of working doctrine in our company. Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up. That it just seemed like such a long time you've been there, but it's only been a year you've been in that role.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I'm experiencing in coaching is that there's a lot of shakeup in the industry, and people are moving to different industries and different jobs.
Yeah.
And one of the things they struggle with is that they get to a job and they'll be talking to me about some issues they're going through. And I'm thinking they're there for a couple of years. And find out they're only there for a couple of months and they want to get up that mountain. How did you overcome that? What would you say to somebody who's looking to get there yesterday?
Yeah, I would say remote working is not helping people in this regard. It's not. You know, I think we learn through apprenticeship. We learn through proximity. And I learned so much of what I know by being around other leaders and watching them and learning from them. So, you know, I think if you've ever heard of Prof G, Scott Galloway has an amazing podcast, but he says that the office is a feature, not a bug. It's a feature, not a bug, for people who are trying to get up in their careers. Maybe you're at a point in your career where you've learned everything you need to know and you can do it from home. But if you have vertical ambition, you want to do more and be more and get promoted, get in the office. Get in the office, get around other leaders, observe them, observe the things they do, observe the things they don't do, ask them questions. It's a governor on your career. It's complete governor on you. And it might feel like I got all this work-life balance. And there's a lot of ways to structure your life. And your career, for some people, it's a very small part of what they do. And they just want to go to work and make a salary, and they want to make it about other things. And, you know, I have no reservation for that. There's a million ways to structure your life, and there's no right one way. But if your career and career advancement is important to you, proximity matters. People that are visible, that are learning through apprenticeship, they're going to get promoted quicker. So that's a big bit of advice I think I would give to people listening.
I do. I teach something called the art of networking because I was good at doing it. I didn't realize that's what I was doing, right? Yes. I was really good at it. And once I started coaching, I realized that they're lacking the networking skills that they need. And one, you hit on something key. You are just this people-centric CEOs. So you're people-centric leaders. So you genuinely care about people, and you're not too busy for them.
Yep.
And some of the folks I'm coaching, they've experienced leaders that are too busy for them. So they're shy. They're afraid to go out there and put themselves out there. So that's one of the things I've been teaching. Like, you have to go out there. You have to network, because you have to know who's talking about you in that boardroom when you're not there. Yeah. You need people to be talking about you in the boardroom.
Yeah, you got to be on the radar. And I empathize with that. If you have leaders that don't have time to spend with you, how do you work around that? Yeah. Maybe that's the type of company you don't want to work for. Find somewhere else to work, because you want people that are willing to invest in you. And it doesn't always have to be your direct boss. I mean, so many people in their careers get promoted because they're very good at the specific task that they do, and they don't learn leadership skills, and they don't want to pass it on to the next generation. But there'll be someone in that work environment that does have that set of skills, and will, if you put yourself on their radar, they'll invest in you. And I think your point's a really good one, that you need people advocating for you in that room that you're not in. Sure.
Building that board of directors. We're pretty big on the board of directors, having your own personal board of directors.
For sure. I think that's an important thing.
All right, so we're going to get a little bit vulnerable now.
Okay, all right.
What is your biggest fear? Personally and professionally, it doesn't matter. What's your biggest fear in life?
I mean, professionally, the fear of failure. Like, I think now that I lead a huge company with lots of people, I always say there's like 6,000 employees at Light & Wonder who depend on the business as their economic engine to raise their kids, put their kids through school, all those things. So, we need this business to be healthy in perpetuity. And I always say that growing businesses are the best place to work, because growing businesses mean you need more people. You need more people in more senior roles. It's promotions, it's pay rises, it's all those kinds of things. So, I think if we can't keep this business growing, which I believe we will, that would be a personal failure for me. I take that very seriously. That's an obligation. I fear for my daughters living and growing up in a social media world. Like, I think they're getting to an age now where you're starting to see, kids not be very nice to each other in school, and that's a scary one, because I feel like I have way less control over that, because I can't be in the schoolroom, I can't be in the schoolyard, I can't, I can't tell that bully, there's going to be consequences if they do that again. It feels like it's a bit out of your control. So all you can really do is, invest in your kids, believe in your kids, give them all the time, give them all the tools, and then, put them out there and hope they figure it out. But, I just feel like I grew up, the technology I had was a Motorola flip phone or a Nokia thing with a snake game on it. I killed that game, by the way. But there was no social media. There was no, building an image of yourself and people tearing you down. Like, that's a very, very scary world to live in and to have kids grow up in and have almost zero control over that, other than making sure that they have all the tools that they need to deal with that.
What about male allies? Do you feel like, I know you're a dad girl, right? Girl dad.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that? I know you're a big advocate for that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to your girls, like, how do you feel like them growing up in a world where, like, it's so hard to find male allies?
Yeah. I think the world's doing better at this over time. It's certainly not, it's imperfect. There's no doubt about that. But I think, there's great in our industry things like GGW. I think, there's a lot of male leaders who are leaning into this. And, I see a world where when they get to the professional, if they can get through this crazy, tumultuous, teenage years, I think from a professional setting, we've done a lot to advance women in the workplace. Still a lot of work to be done. But, I think if you look at the stats of, women in colleges, people in leadership, it's getting better over time. It's not all the way there, but, I do see a world where from a professional setting, once they get into the workforce, that, they'll be welcomed. Yeah.
This image just flashed into my head that I saw of you on social media with one of your little girls. You were singing Shell.
Yes, that's Isabella. She won't do that with me anymore. She's turned 10. She's officially cool. And no matter how many bribes, I play the guitar quite poorly, but yeah, she used to sing quite enthusiastically, but now not so much. Bit sad. Bit of a transition, I guess.
Yeah. Austin, do you have a question for us?
I do have one for you guys to answer.
Okay.
So this one asks, in the pursuit of self-improvement, how do you strike a balance between setting ambitious goals and practicing self-compassion to avoid burnout?
Oh, good question.
That is a great question. I think you got to set ambitious goals. Otherwise, I don't feel like you're pushing yourself to achieve all that you can. But then be realistic when you fall short and recalibrate. And, I think ultimately the goal is an important thing, but it's actually the process of achieving that goal. And if you're not willing to put in the work, then don't expect the outcome, So I think it's as much about kind of I'm just started a training program for my next Ironman, which is a calamity right now. So, and I just have to remind myself that it's a process and you're going to start where you're at. And then if you do the work week after week, I saw something today that was like, if you win enough days in the week, you win the week. And if you win enough weeks in the month, you win the month. And if you win enough months, you win the year, and then you're on your way. So I think you got to do the work. And so set the ambitious goal, but then, it all comes down to, are you willing to put the work in?
Yeah. When is your Ironman race?
It's in April of next year. So I got time, but it's a week at a time, I got to win the weeks and months and years.
Is it in Las Vegas?
It's in Oceanside, California. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
At least you have the ocean.
Well, now I've definitely committed on this podcast, the Sally Allen podcast, that I'm doing it. So I'll get haters in the streets saying, "What happened? Did you do it?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm definitely doing it now. It's official. It's officially official."
It's officially official.
Yes.
Very good. Matt, is there anything that you would like to share with our audience? Anything that you think that they should know?
No, I think you should listen to the Sally Allen podcast. She has a way of dragging the detail out of you, and she's an exceptional person and very well networked, as we discussed. So you'll see lots of great people on this podcast. And yeah, thanks for making this an easy experience for me, Sally. Appreciate you.
Yes, I wanted them to see this side of you. I was going to ask you some more personal questions, but I'm sparing you that.
Appreciate it. We'll set that for next time.
All right. Well, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Until next time.